Welcome to Build Your Yardstick, an introduction to confident caregiving skills. My name is McKenna Gans, the program administrator at the Eating Disorder Foundation, and I'm excited to welcome everyone here tonight. Today's workshop is brought to you in collaboration with the Eating Disorder Foundation and Bryn Miller, LPC CEDS of Bryn Miller Parent Coaching. I would like to take a moment to share a little bit about the Eating Disorder Foundation. We are a nonprofit that was founded in 2003 with a mission to be an effective resource in the prevention and elimination of eating disorders through free and accessible education, support, and advocacy. We are a Denver-based organization that is now serving individuals and families both nationally and internationally. I want to thank anyone who made a donation upon registration. We are able to provide free services because of the generosity of our community. If you would like to make a donation after this presentation, you're also welcome to do that on our website. If you have any questions for our presenter during this presentation, I invite you to use the chat feature to send a message with me directly throughout the workshop. The chat is kept confidential and will come to me directly. We'll save time for Q&A after the presentation, and I'll go ahead and deliver your questions to our presenter. We will likely not be able to share the PowerPoint. However, we are recording this workshop and we'll send the recording as soon as possible. I am going to use the chat to send you all a link to the companion workbook. You can download that during this webinar or afterwards to follow along during the talk or to reference afterwards. It'll just ask you to enter your email when you click on the link, and then you'll get a PDF of a 19-page workbook. And now I would like to introduce our speaker, Bryn Miller. I apologize, my mouse just ran out of battery, so I can't scroll down to her bio. Bryn, would you mind introducing yourself while I go get a new battery for my mouse?
No problem. I have technical difficulties like that all the time. In fact, my mouse also died today, so I feel you. Gosh, I don't have it memorized, but hello everyone. Thank you guys for being here. Especially those of you that are, taking time out of your evening on a Thursday in the middle of the summer to be here in real life. It's an honor and a privilege. So I'm Bryn Miller. I am a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Colorado. I am also a certified eating disorder specialist and consultant, or what we used to call supervisor. I'm also an advanced certified therapist in emotion-focused family therapy, or EFFT, which is really going to be a lot of the skills that we're using and talking about today, a lot of the philosophy that kind of underpins most of my work with caregivers. And I am one of, I think it's 7 or 8 people in the country that's certified to run the official 2-day EFFT caregiver workshop, which I had the opportunity to do with EDF in April, actually. So I'm deeply, deeply passionate about working with caregivers, getting skills out to those of you that are supporting loved ones. I do a lot of work with parents of teens and young adults. But this work tonight, everything that I'm bringing to you guys is appropriate regardless of your loved one's diagnosis, regardless of any comorbid diagnoses they may have, regardless of their age, whether you're a sibling, a provider, a parent, a grandparent, just someone that has somebody that you care about that's struggling. These are all going to be appropriate skills for you. So I know McKenna kind of put it in the chat already, but I do have a workbook that I put together that goes along with what we're working with today. You can access it now and print it out and have it with you. You can grab just a pen and a paper. So if you don't have something to write with, I try and make my workshop super interactive so that you can leave here tonight by the time we wrap up in less than an hour, that you're going to walk away with some really concrete, actionable skills to use. You could start using tonight. So the workbook, you don't have to, but it just kind of gives you that little framework. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So I do have a coaching program that's called the Response Roadmap. I'll tell you guys a little bit about more ways to work with me, ways to stay in touch, and then some of the work that I'm going to be doing for caregivers with EDF over the next year or so. So I think that's it. McKenna, if it's good with you, I'll just kind of dive in and get it going, if that's okay. I don't know if you can access that thumbs up.
Amazing. We look forward to seeing your presentation.
Awesome. All right, let me share my screen here and get this going. All right. Okay. Everybody see this okay? Just want to make sure before I jump into it. McKenna, you want to can you give me a thumbs up if you've got it?
Yes, we can see your screen just fine.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, happy to be here with you guys. I'm just going to pretend we're all in a room together and I can see your lovely faces. But today we're going to be talking about building your yardstick. And this is an introduction to confident caregiving skills. In fact, in my caregiver course, coaching course, this is actually part of one of the pre-modules before we kind of get into the bulk of the work. That's really about starting strong and starting on a really solid foundation as you're getting into doing these skills, as you're learning more about what you can do as a caregiver, how we can help empower you to feel like you can be the most effective support that you want to be for your loved one. So we're going to be talking all today about building your yardstick. So just a huge thank you for allowing me to be here today. Thank you to the Eating Disorder Foundation. This is just the coolest organization. They have a ton of resources. I'm always directing families to EDF. So if you are new, thank you for being here. Please check out the work that they do. Also want to give a thank you to the founders and pioneers of emotion-focused family therapy, or EFFT, Adele LaFrance, the people that have really done so much work to bring this work to caregivers. And I'm honored to be in that lineage somewhere. And I want to say my biggest thank you for the caregivers, for all of you. Thank you for being here, taking your time, being willing to show up and be vulnerable and do this work is a gift that you give your loved ones. Even if you walk away tonight and you're like, you know, I'm not going to listen to anything she said, or I'm not going to do any of those skills. Just taking the time to be here tells me so much about your support, your love, your care for the person that you're here on behalf of. So huge thank you to you. Who am I? I'm Bryn. Hi. As I mentioned, I'm a certified eating disorder specialist and consultant. I have over a decade of working exclusively with people with eating disorders and comorbid mental health issues alongside their support systems. I'm also an expert in caregiver support and skills with that certification in emotion-focused family therapy, and gosh, probably eight-ish years of doing that work specifically. And it's really important for me to also say I am a caregiver myself. I have 2 children, and I am deeply imperfect at my parenting. We had a week this week, you guys, I will tell you. And it always seems to line up that my most challenging parenting weeks bump right up against giving a talk like this. And I have to really wrestle with, like, you know, who am I to have a talk like this when I am struggling so mightily myself with parenting? But I say that to say I have the utmost respect and admiration. Parenting on its best days is, I think, the most challenging thing that we can do. And also, I think in many ways, the most important legacy we leave on the world. And so just want to say I am in the boat with you. I do this work because I am so passionate about supporting caregivers like you, but also selfishly because I feel like I'm fumbling my way in the dark half the time. And God, I have 10 years of these tools and skills and a master's and all of it. And so I just say it to say we are in this boat together, and I have just nothing but incredible respect and admiration for all of you. So we'll figure it out together. So, how to get the most out of your time today? Like I said, make it interactive. I always want you to leave here feeling like you got as much out of this as possible. So there's that link. The link's in the chat. Grab the workbook if you want. Another really important thing to say is I want you to do you. I want you to honor where you are today. As we step into this right now, you're gonna all be coming from different places. You're gonna have had different weeks. You're gonna have, maybe you walked right out of a tough moment with your loved one right into this workshop. So take care of yourself. Go as far as you can. It's okay if there's places where you need to stop, if you need to use the restroom, if you need to grab a glass of water, if you need to take a break to breathe. Please take care of yourself. And also know that you are the expert on you. So I'm going to be putting things out there today. I like to say, eat the fish and spit out the bones. Take what is useful for you and your loved one and your family. I am not the expert on you. I am going to put out an array of things that I want you to play with. I want you to filter through your sense of your loved one and what might help and what you're like, no, and listen to that gut. That's such a huge part of this work, is getting back to being able to feel confident, knowing that you're the expert on your loved one. And know that we are just barely scratching the surface on this work. So if you're interested, if you want to do a deep dive, I'm going to have a bunch of resources at the end and tell you different ways to kind of continue to do this work. So let's all just take a deep breath. I know that's like the most annoying therapist-y thing that I can say. One of the beautiful things about virtual is that we can all be doing 700 other things and then pop in here and all of a sudden you're in this new space. Take a moment, take a deep breath, really give yourself, and I will stop talking. Give yourself a moment to leave everything on the other side of that door, on the other side of this screen, and allow yourself to really have this time. This is a gift for your loved one, but my hope is that it also feels like a gift for you. So I'm going to stop talking for 30 seconds and just give you a moment to breathe. All right. And if you noticed that that's maybe the first time that you had a quiet breath today, just notice it, be aware of it, come to yourself with some kindness and compassion around like, oh, that's the first deep, quiet breath I've had all day. Put it in your pocket. Know that you have access to this. This is one of the best hacks that we have in terms of regulating our own nervous system, which is so important when we're in a caregiving role. Use this, come back to this. Taking that deep breath tells your nervous system we're safe, we're okay, and it's the fastest way we can get ourselves regulated. So I know it's annoying, but I have to say it, So today we're going to focus on you, the caregiver. Why are we going to do that? Because you have a huge influence on your loved one. There is so much that you can do. And we're going to give you some of those tools and skills today. In part because you are in charge of you, right? So I could do a whole talk of what I do in the room with people that are struggling with eating disorders. That's not who's here with me today, right? That's not what you have control over. So I'm going to be talking with you, the caregiver. And also because you care more than anyone else on earth. So when we can leverage that, when we can really empower you in that, we can move mountains. So welcome. Here's the problem, which I probably don't have to tell you. It's why you're here. You know this. I hear this from caregivers all the time. You feel lost. You desperately want to help your loved one, but you're not sure how. You try to help and you feel confused. You may even be hearing from your loved one, this is your fault. Doesn't mean that it's your fault. We'll talk about that on the next slide. But this is something that we hear sometimes as caregivers. Your loved one might be pushing you away or even saying, I don't want to talk to you about this. Don't talk to me about this. They might be cutting you out, putting up walls, right? You worry that you're not helping. In fact, and this is the most common thing I hear from caregivers, you worry that you're making it worse. And that is oftentimes what makes us feel the most paralyzed and the most scared. So I have to say this, caregivers do not cause mental health issues, period. End of sentence. Hopefully, you've heard this a million times before. If not, I am sorry. There's an unfortunate long history in psychological work of blaming the environment, blaming the system, blaming the caregivers. And so if you haven't heard this, please take this in. And if you've heard it a million times, take it in again. You did not cause this. At the same time, you're here, and I'm so passionate about doing this work with caregivers because you can be the most important part of your loved one's support system or treatment team. So there's so much we can do, even though you didn't cause this. This isn't why this is happening. So how does it work? Why am I here talking to you guys? How does the work that you're going to do today actually support your loved one? So first of all, you get support. When you get support, you're better able to support your loved one, and they're better able to turn around and support themselves. We talk about this in EFFT as cascading attunement. So if you can picture a waterfall that starts at the top, pouring into this waterfall, and then this waterfall spills over and pours into this waterfall, pours into this one, and so on and so forth. So I am here tonight in service of you. I want to pour into you so you can turn around and pour into your loved one so they can turn around and pour into themselves and do a better job of taking care of themselves, no matter what they're struggling with. So self-care is other care. Taking care of yourself is, in fact, taking care of your loved one. So we've got the hose into the bucket, into the flowers. When you get support, it's like pouring into yourself. When you pour into yourself, you have more to pour into your loved one. How many times have we tried to show up for the people we love, pouring from an empty cup? And it doesn't work, right? So we want to sit at the top of that waterfall. We also get you skills so that you're better able to manage your own emotions that very naturally, very normally, to be expected, will get activated in the context of supporting your loved one. When you're better able to manage your emotions, you're better able to help your loved one manage their own emotions. And as they're able to manage their own emotions better, we're less pulled to problematic behaviors to manage those emotions. The greater sense of confidence we have in our ability to feel sad, to feel lonely, to feel angry, to feel disappointed, without the need to reach for behaviors to help manage those emotions is your key to emotion regulation, is your key to having more flexibility about how we respond to these really tough moments, which is what we want for our loved ones. And so I want to get you those skills so you can model that for them, so that you can co-regulate with them. So you get to model the skills. They can learn from watching you, and they can better access their skills by seeing what you're doing, by interacting with you as you use these skills. Why does this work? For a few reasons. One is that you have access to your loved one. As a caregiver, you have access to your loved one on a regular basis. And I want to make a really important note here too. if you are estranged from your loved one, if you no longer have a relationship with the person that you're here to support, first of all, I'm sending you so much love, because there's such incredible pain in being separated from someone that you love so much, especially someone you love enough to show up for something like this, even if you don't have the relationship that you would want. There is still so much you can do. You are still in system with this person in so many ways. And so just want to send you so much love. And if you do have access to them, that's one of the things that we want to leverage, right? So even if, I'm your loved one's therapist and we're meeting 2 or 3 times a week, it's typically a fraction of the amount of time that they're going to spend with you, amount the access that you have, even if it's text messages, even if it's a FaceTime call or an email here and there. Also, because you are the expert on your loved one. No one knows your loved one the way that you do. That's why it's so important for me to say that up front. None of this is going to be one size fits all. So I want you to take everything that I say and just really run it through your filter of your loved one, of what part of this might work for them, what part of this might not, what part of this works for me, and what doesn't work for me. Really, really important. Also, because you have the healthy brain in the room. So as the adult with space from the mental health issue, we can use your healthy brain to help your loved one. And when I say healthy brain, I don't mean that you don't have your own struggles, even struggles with your own eating or your own body image. Often that can actually be this open door of empathy. It can be this superpower if we can leverage it. But that you have distance from your loved one's experience of this. And so we can use that, right? You also love your loved one more than anyone else. As a caregiver, no one knows your loved one the way that you do. And again, when we can leverage that love, we are working with a superpower. Plus, you are wired to your loved one. So in any relationship where there's an oxytocin release, where there's a love that happens, I know I'm using that word a lot for a therapist setting. But that when we have that release of oxytocin, your brain actually starts to wire to respond to that person. So on an interpersonal neurobiological level, you have a superpower that the best therapist, doing their best therapist-y things, will not have access to. And this is one of the really, really cool things about caregivers, is that your loved ones are just simply wired in their brain to respond to you, even when you don't do this perfectly, even when you don't feel like you showed up as well as you should have. It has a greater impact because of that wiring that's in place. And also because you'll never give up. As a caregiver, you aren't going anywhere. It's why you're here today. And so no matter where things are, no matter how tough it gets, and with eating disorders, especially when it's been years, sometimes decades, there's a long history there. It's really challenging, and you're here today, right? And so you're not going anywhere. Which is another reason that we want to get these skills and tools to you. So just to back this up with some research for a second, what does the data say? And EFFT is really cool. And again, thank you to the pioneers there, Adele LaFrance being a huge one. They've done a beautiful job studying this, and thank goodness, because I don't like doing that, but I'm really glad somebody has. And so what do we see? What do we see when caregivers have access to EFFT tools and skills? We see improved outcomes for your loved one. So we actually have seen a decrease in symptoms for the loved one when parents and caregivers are using EFFT skills, which is pretty wild. And this actually goes along with the research that Eli Leibowitz and his team have done in the SPACE program, which is that they have a program for parents of children that struggle with anxiety, where they never ever meet the individual that's struggling. They only work with the parents, And it has been shown to be just as effective as individual therapy. So not just in this work, but more broadly, we're seeing this data backed up by multiple people. So we also see improved outcomes for you, more confidence, less fear, a decrease in self-blame. When you feel effective, you feel less burned out, you feel less resentful and less helpless. I was reading a study just a couple days ago that linked up post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms for caregivers of loved ones with anorexia specifically, and how self-blame is a mediator there. So in other words, the greater the self-blame, the greater the trauma symptoms for the caregiver. And so when we can do this work, and EFFT has some beautiful work that we do around self-blame, we can actually help you process what you've been through as the caregiver in a more effective way. Again, ideally, we also see less stress and conflict. So when you have a plan, you tend to feel less stressed. You know how to de-escalate tough situations. More confidence means less conflict. So it takes two people to create a pattern, but only one to change it. And this is Esther Perel, who's this fantastic relationship therapist. But it's something really important for us to keep in mind as we jump into this work today, that because we are in system with our loved one, if you think about like a machine that has a bunch of cogs and wheels, that when we're deeply connected with someone, when we change, they change. And they don't have to do anything except for respond to the fact that we moved this cog in a different way. So I want to be clear, it's not this one-to-one, this isn't magic. That being said, it's the closest thing I found to it in a decade of doing this work. But keeping in mind that even though you are here, that even though it takes two people to create a pattern, one of us can change it. So my goal in working with caregivers is restoring your ability to be calm, to be confident, and to be connected, both to your loved one and the caregiver you want to be when your loved one struggles. Goals are great. We're going to talk about that today. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. And this is James Clear from Atomic Habits. I'm a huge geek about behavior change and motivation and understanding how we make this easier for people to do this work. And this is a beautiful idea around goals are awesome, but we've got to support it with a system. So when I work with caregivers, our system is the response roadmap. And it's 5 steps where we work on recognizing what's coming up for you. How do we help you regulate in the moment so you can reconnect with your values so that you can respond more effectively instead of react, respond, right, effectively to your loved one. How important refueling is, and we're going to talk about that today as well, because it really connects with this yardstick. And then reflect and repeat. How did it go? And how do we keep going? So this is the system that this yardstick is preparing you to embark on. And that every different step correlates with these goals of being calm, confident, and connected. So you get it. Hopefully, I've sold you on it. There's a reason you're here, and it starts with building your yardstick. So big part of this is answering this question, how do I know if it's working? I want to learn these skills. I want to learn these tools, but how do I know if it's effective? And I have an obsession with this because it's just your time and your energy is too valuable a resource for us to not be asking this question. Is it effective? Is it working? So I want you to take a moment and I want you to just set a goal. Like, what's your first goal? You're here. There's a reason you're here. What would you like to see have happen, right? And just the first thing that kind of comes to top of mind, right? So what's your first instinct? And if you guys want, you can even pop them in the chat if you want to share, no pressure. But if you want to put anything in the chat of like what your first instinct is, it is only natural. And the most common thing I see when I do this with caregivers is that when your loved one's struggling, we start on focusing what they need to do or not do in order to make progress. And this makes perfect sense. In fact, this is the most rational, logical thing, right? My loved one's struggling. I need them to do X or do Y or do Z or stop doing X and stop doing Y and stop doing Z because they're the ones that are struggling, right? It's easy for us to see their behavior and see so clearly the way that their behavior is keeping them stuck in these cycles or causing this pain for them. And because on some level, you can't just do it for them, right? If your loved one is restricting, you can't eat for them. If they are purging, you can't stop purging for them. We focus on our loved one's behavior because they're the ones that's struggling, right? It makes so much sense. And it tends to leading us to setting what I call the wrong goals. And wrong goals start with the idea of are they meaning my loved one. And this is so tempting. And it's only natural to want to use your loved one's behavior in turn as a marker of your success. Are they engaging in behaviors? Are they more regulated emotionally? Are they asking for help when they need it? Are they getting more support? Are they willing to go to treatment? Fill this in with anything that's happening with your loved one, right? And we do this without even really being aware of what we're doing because it makes so much sense. And there's a downside to using our loved one's behavior as the marker of our success in how we're showing up. And the biggest downside is that it can be incredibly disempowering. If your desire for your loved one to get better was all you needed to make this all happen, it would have happened already 1,000 times over, if I could guess, right? So doing this work and building out our yardstick today is really about holding two truths at the same time. And one truth is there are some things that you cannot do for your loved one. You cannot go to treatment in service of your loved one. You cannot eat the food for them. You cannot stop the purging for them. You cannot have them refrain from compulsive exercise. You can't get in the way of the binge, right? There are some things that we cannot do for our loved ones. And at the same time, there are so many things that you can do for your loved one. And so we're holding both of these and we're trying to figure out where we put our focus so that it's the most effective, so that it's the most empowering for you. So what do we do instead? We build your yardstick. When you have a loved one that's struggling, you don't have the time and the energy for ineffective goals. You need goals that work, and you need a system that helps you know if you're meeting those goals, so you can know if what you're doing is working. Any therapist worth their salt will tell you this. A huge part of this work, even if you are evidence-based and you've read every article out there, is going to be trial and error. We've got to figure it out because people, human beings, your loved ones that are struggling are moving targets that change day to day, moment to moment, year by year. And so we have to try different things and see what works. There is no one way to do this. So we need a way to evaluate if it's effective. One of the things we talk a lot about in EFFT is caregiver blocks. And if you've never come across this, I have another talk that I did for EDF that's up on their workshop series, so you guys can access this. But we talk about the feelings that tend to get activated for caregivers in the context of doing this work and how that can lead to different behaviors, which are on the top of the tree. And how focusing on goals that are outside of our control can really increase some of the feelings that lead to these caregiver blocks that get us responding and acting in a way that's not in alignment with how we want to show up for our loved ones. So this work is really gonna target feelings of helplessness, feelings of hopelessness, and that burnout that can really amplify some of these other feelings and shoot us right up into the top of the tree where we're showing up in this way, where we're accommodating, or we're getting critical of our loved one, or we're getting defensive, right? So how do you know if it's working? you're building your yardstick. And even after this talk, even after you go through the workbook, all the things, you're going to continue to be tempted to see your loved one's behavior as the marker for your success and how you judge yourself. What I want to offer is an opportunity to notice it, to be aware of it, and to really shift. Okay, can I refocus on what I'm doing? So we know if it's working, if you feel more calm, if you feel more confident, and if you feel more connected, both to your loved one and the caregiver you want to be. And those are all you questions. So this kind of gets us into the workbook. So you'll see this actual slide in the workbook. This is the why. Why are we doing this? Why these 3 skills, right? So the first one is I want to keep you focused. So when you're starting a new skill, we have to set goals that are challenging but attainable so we can build momentum and making progress. So your yardstick, these 3 skills that we're going to do, is going to help you stay on track. The next reason is that it's really important to evaluate progress. Like we were just talking about, you need a way to assess if what you're doing is working because you're too busy and your energy is too finite to feel like you're wasting your time. Your yardstick is an efficient way to evaluate your progress. And the last reason is that a mind shift is crucial whenever we're doing a new skill. We need to approach this pain point in a different way. So having the right lens can really help you maximize your impact. So in service of that, the 3 skills that I'm going to have you leave with today, and I kind of snuck a few in the more in the back, but the 3 big ones that are in the workbook today are going to be the visual, which is the circle and the square. And we're going to do that first. It's going to help you articulate the most effective goals. The second is the questions, the did I questions. And this is a writing prompt that's going to help you check in with yourself. So you can collect data, so you can kind of self-monitor, if you will. And then the last is the reframe, and I call this the O reframe, and you'll see why. And it's supporting this vital paradigm shift around how you see tough moments so that you can show up. So any one of these can work independently. I'm going to walk you through all of them. And if I go a little fast, it's because I talk too much and I'm going to run out of time. But also because you'll get this recording so you can go back and pause, you can pull out your workbook. But I'm going to walk you through how to do this. So if you're like frantically writing and you're like, you're going too fast, don't worry. Once you get the recording, we can pause and go back. So this is the first one. This is the visual. This is the circle and the square. So I want you to, and if you don't have the workbook, totally fine. Just take your piece of paper and draw yourself like a nice big square on a piece of paper, and then put a circle in the middle of the square. And I want you to write in the square, but not inside the circle. So in other words, like in here, this area, but not in here. Okay. So inside the square, but outside the circle. Write down your loved one's behavior. They're restricting. They won't go to treatment. They're not taking their medication. They're binging. They're purging. They're self-harming. They won't talk to me. They're pushing me away. They're isolating. They're on their phone all the time. Whatever it is that comes to mind in terms of your loved one's behavior that makes you worried, that makes you scared, that you see as part of their mental health struggles, put it on the outside in the, you guys know what you get it, right? In this area, right? And again, give yourself 1 or 2 just so you remember and you can go back and kind of do this slowly. And then in the circle, I want you to write down things that you could do or not do in relation to your loved one's behavior. And that's really what we're going to focus on. So we're going to take what's inside of that circle, and that's going to be our focus. So do you see how we just sort of went from like having the square and the circle, and then we dropped the square? What this allows us to do is laser focus on the things that are in your control. So they're related to and connected to the things over here in the box, but they're things that you have control over. And when I say your behavior, it's got to meet a couple criteria. A behavior is something that if I followed you around with a video camera, I could see you doing or not doing. So it's not having different thoughts, it's not having different feelings, it's doing different things. And it has to be yours. Meaning if I said, I'll give you $1 million, do it or not do it. Or I came to you the next day and I said, I need a yes or no. Did you do X or did you not do it? X. I need you to be able to have it within 100% of your control. So for example, if my loved one is isolating, right? I'm going to go back to here. My loved one is isolating on their phone in their room, and I'm really worried it's contributing to their depression, which is making their eating disorder worse, right? Let's just say that. My behavior is how I respond when they isolate, right? And so one of the things that I could really focus on is when they isolate, I send them a text message because I know they're in their room on their phone. Hey, thinking about you. Can I pop in and say hi? We're texting them from like the hallway, right? You know, or would love to see your face. Can you come downstairs for a minute? They might not, but it's 100% in my control if I send that text message, or if I just say, hey, I love you, send the text message. So they might come downstairs, they might say like, gee whiz, thanks mom, cool text message. Probably not. Let's not, you know, hold our breath for that. But this is 100% in my control of how I handle this. I can knock on the door and stick my head in, say, hey, I'm gonna go for a walk. Whether they go for the walk or not, whether they tell me like, get out of here, I don't want to talk to you, right? That's their behavior. My behavior is in the face of the isolation, I didn't back away. I didn't withdraw. I went forward and I said, I care about you. And I want to communicate that in this moment. So this is a huge shift to go from really focusing on their behavior to our behavior. Is it a one-to-one? Again, like if I'm like, hey, shoot that text message, I'd love to see you. They come skipping down the stairs and give me a hug. No, that's not usually how it works. And I am doing what I can do to be in system to change the system. If my normal habit is, they're up in their room and I get critical and I withdraw maybe, and I leave them alone, even though I don't want to, I don't feel like that's the most helpful, that I'm going to do something different, right? But again, totally focused on my own behavior. So that's your first skill. That's the circle in the square that we want to look at. The next skill, and what will help us sort of evaluate this and shift this into action, is asking yourself, did I do the best I could? Did I try to use these skills, even if I didn't actually? And so we ask ourselves these questions. In the left column, we write out your loved one's behavior. Again, they're isolating, they're restricting. And then in the did I column is how do I want to respond to that? So I have a 4-year-old, so this is my life. So my 4-year-old has a meltdown at Target. Did I stay calm and not yell? And that's my goal. And then at the end of the day, when I'm looking back on my day and I'm assessing the successes and the struggles, my loved one had a meltdown. Did I stay calm? I did. My 4-year-old still had the meltdown, right? But I handled it in a way that I felt good about. And I will tell you guys, on those really tough parenting days, sometimes my mantra to myself, and this is coming from someone with, you know, that teaches this stuff. Sometimes my mantra to myself is just don't do something that you're going to regret later, or just try not to escalate it. Just don't make it worse with your behavior, right? And often, you know, in my house with a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, it's this escalation, right? They yell, I yell, they yell, I yell, right? And so just sometimes that's where the bar is, because that's the best I can do on those days, right? Is did I just do the best I can, where when I go to bed at night, I don't feel crappy about how I handled it. It doesn't mean the day wasn't a complete mess, but I can put that in the success column for myself. And then I can come to myself with compassion of like, okay, my loved one had the meltdown. Did I stay calm? No, I yelled. I yelled and I was really frustrated and I didn't do my breathing that I know I need to do, right? And that was a struggle. And I can come to myself with compassion of like, my struggle was staying calm. I wonder if it had to do with not getting enough sleep last night. I wonder if it had to do with having too much stuff going on at work. I wonder if it had to do with trying to cram in too many errands today and we could have just forgotten the target thing, right? So we're coming to ourselves with kindness in these moments. And then the last one, the O reframe I talk about is this idea of obstacle, obligation, or opportunity. And how you see something or perception of something has the power to change everything. So what if you saw these moments in a different light? And again, a caveat, I don't want to pretend that wishful thinking is going to change these really, really tough situations that we're in sometimes, but it can be an incredible thought exercise to shift how we're looking at something and say, how does that change? How does that change where this is landing in my nervous system? How does that change my ability to show up the way that I want to? So what if we saw these really tough moments with our loved ones in a different light? So when you have a struggle with your loved one, if you think about the most recent time that you guys like, oh, had a really tough moment, whatever that looks like for you, when you saw it as an obstacle, how do you show up? What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What are the urges? What are the behaviors? I know for me personally, a big place my brain goes when I struggle, when it's like, oh, this is an obstacle, you know, like me and my kid's having a meltdown and like, oh, one of the places that's very unhelpful that my brain goes is I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it right. That's my bent, right? And when I think about things as an obstacle, I'm very quick to say, I'm not doing it right. I'm doing it all wrong. What's wrong with me? Why can't I use all those skills I taught everyone at that EDF talk on Thursday? And I can get very self-critical, right? It's how my brain's wired. I can come to myself with compassion around that. But when I see something as an obstacle, I'm so much more quick to do that. If I see something as an obligation, it kind of bolsters me a little bit of like, okay, all right, Bryn, like you don't have a choice. You've got a 4-year-old, you're going to have meltdowns. Like you know, like suck up and use your skills, right? It's better than when I see it as an obstacle, but it still feels heavy, if you will, versus if I see it as an opportunity. My 4-year-old is starfishing in the middle of Target, throwing a fit about having Sour Patch Kids. You know, I'm getting activated. All of these things are coming up. All these thoughts and feelings are coming up. And I remind myself there's an opportunity in this moment to teach him how to manage his feelings, to help him understand what he's feeling and build skills around it. This is an opportunity for resilience, for him to realize that he can not get the treat, not get the, you know, thing, the Sour Patch Kids, and still be okay, right? I know you're frustrated. We're not going to have those today. I need you to get up off the floor. It's an opportunity for me to say, okay, I notice that I'm embarrassed in front of these other, you know, parents that are here. And I can remind myself that that's less important than how I want to show up in this moment, right? And so when we look at it as an obstacle, when we look at it as an obligation, when we look at it as an opportunity, how does that shift things? So quick review. You've got your circle and the square to articulate the most effective goals. The did I questions help you check in with if you're being effective. And then the O reframe gives you that paradigm shift. And I'm going to offer just a couple quick more things. And of course, I'm running out of time because this is what I do. Are you seeing your loved one as a math problem? And this is from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, if you're familiar with it. When our loved ones struggle, it is so tempting and normal even to see them as a math problem, something that needs to be solved or fixed, especially this is the case if the stakes are really high and your loved one is struggling, and it's dangerous as it can be in an eating disorder, right? This is totally normal. But ask yourself, when you interact with your loved one in this way, through this lens, is it helpful? Does it help? And if it does, in what way? And does it hurt? And if so, in what way? And an alternative to this is, could we see them as a sunset? That we don't try and change a sunset. There's nothing to fix or to solve or to make different. We accept it just as it is. And if you really sit and think about this, if we were to look at a sunset and say like, oh, I wish that cloud was poofier, like that little bit of orange, like it should be pink, we would never, right? And again, this isn't going to solve all the problems. This isn't going to be in lieu of a treatment plan, for example. But when we're caught up in this, like, I've got to fix it and I'm not doing enough and there's so much I need to do, to just take a breath and take a moment and see your loved one as a sunset and just see what shift that happens. What do you notice in your body? What do you notice in your nervous system? And then a quick word on boundaries. I could talk to you guys, I could do this and tell you all these things for 100 hours. So I'll tell you how we can do that at the end. But a quick word on boundaries. You cannot come to your loved one with patience and compassion if you feel like you're a doormat, if you feel like your boundaries are being compromised. So boundaries are an articulation of what is okay and what is not okay. I have a little Brene Brown video on boundaries for you guys, but I'll put that in the chat so we can open it up to questions. Because I also have one quick word on resentment, and this is also from Brene Brown. She talks about how it's actually connected to envy and not anger. So when she starts to feel resentful, as is inevitable in caregiving, and so if you're feeling any judgment or guilt about feeling resentful sometime, please know that is an expected natural byproduct of caregiving, especially for someone struggling with an eating disorder. Instead of thinking, what is that person doing wrong or what should they be doing? I think, what do I need? What I'm afraid to ask for? Because it's often connected to this envy of someone else getting what you know you need, which is often your own self-care. And so this is why I talk to caregivers in step 4 of refueling. I don't talk about it as self-care anymore because people's eyes glaze over. I want you to think about refueling and taking care of yourself as a non-negotiable. You cannot drive your car on an empty tank. You cannot be a caregiver on an empty tank. You'll end up broken down on the side of the road and it doesn't help anyone. So refuel, refuel, refuel. And lastly, celebrate your wins. This is an antidote to burnout and perfectionism. Often, again, especially when the stakes are really, really high, we don't pause and celebrate our wins. We make some progress, then we say, all right, what's next? And we make some progress and say, all right, what's next? It's draining because we never have the opportunity to allow that success to sort of fill our cup up. So pause and notice the work you're doing. Give yourself some credit for how far you've come. Because wouldn't you want your loved one to do the same in their own journey, in their own recovery process? Oh my gosh, I just threw so much at you guys. And so just a reminder, this is all part and parcel for the response roadmap. And I want to just quickly say, on behalf of your loved one, say thank you. Sometimes they're not in the space to be able to say it. Sometimes helping them can feel like you get the most pushback. And so on behalf of your loved ones, on behalf of everyone that you are here for, I want to just say thank you for them in case you don't hear it from them. So what's next? We have another webinar that we're doing that's going to kind of build off of this in September. We'll send an email out when it gets closer. And then we're also going to do a 1-day virtual version of that EFFT 2-day workshop I talked about in October. So keep an eye out for those. I also have 3 other talks like this that I've done with the Eating Disorder Foundation. One sort of walks you through part of that first step of the response roadmap about recognizing your own emotions. Another one is difficult conversations and how to navigate them during the holidays, but it's actually very appropriate for any difficult conversation. And then lastly, love and limits, which is a quick intro to emotion coaching. So those are all in the workshop series. And then lastly, I have my Response Roadmap parent coaching program. So there's an online course you can access anytime, anywhere on demand. I also do a course in a cohort where I walk an intimate group of parents through this work. And I've got one spot for the one starting a week from today. So reach out if you're interested in that. There's more info on my website too. And then I also do one-on-one coaching along with the course. Plus I send a free monthly newsletter. So please go check all those things out. Okay. All right. Just with 3 minutes left. So please McKenna, let me know if anyone sent any questions, and I know people might need to jump off any minute here, so I apologize. I always talk too much and go too long. So if you want to throw any questions my way in the last few minutes, McKenna, go for it.
Yeah, I have one really good one. She says, I am also in recovery while my daughter is struggling. Do you have any tips? I feel like my own disorder influenced her patterns. Would this look any different in my situation?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that, because you are not alone. I mean, there are estimates with eating disorders that this is up to 80% genetic. And so it makes so much sense that within families and intergenerational, patterns in families, that more than one person would be struggling with this. In terms of the feeling of, I feel like I've influenced this, it's such a part of that self-blame narrative that comes up so often for caregivers, especially parents. And so again, I want to say, come to yourself with kindness. There is beautiful work we can do around the self-blame piece. And again, I would say all the skills apply. And I think that for if you have struggled with something that's sort of in the ballpark or even very similar to what your loved one is struggling with, I always say that door of empathy is open wider for you. So this can be a superpower as long as you're also taking care of yourself, as long as you're also doing your own work, and keeping a really close eye on how that self-blame narrative might crop up. And kind of take you in these different directions. And so coming to yourself with a ton of compassion around that. So I would say work the skills and tools the same. And then just keep an eye on, what you need to be doing to take care of yourself so that you can keep showing up, and really keep an eye on if there's any self-blame that's getting activated, because that can be a huge struggle in the situation where there's already enough struggle. So you can still be so much of a light for your loved one.
And then I'm going to give you one more, which is what are maybe different considerations for different types of caregivers, like maybe for spouses instead of parents?
Totally. That's a great question. I mean, I think it's going to shift and be different, based on the relationship, right? Like, what's your level of access? What's sort of the dynamic? So a spouse, like, you're going to be more like equals, if that makes sense. Whereas like a parent-child relationship, there tends to be a sort of different power differential, for lack of a better word. And so the way in which you're gonna kind of approach them is gonna be different. In terms of the things that we learned today, all of it is still the same. So like if we're looking at like, okay, if I see this tough moment as an obstacle versus an opportunity, for example, the opportunity might be a little bit different. For a parent, it might be, okay, I'm helping them, develop some of these emotion regulation skills. For a spouse, it might be, this is an opportunity to show my partner that I'm not going anywhere, even though they're worried about that, right? Or to show them that they can show me the hardest, toughest moments, and that I have their back. And so that, like, what the opportunity is might be different, but again, the skills sort of should translate.
Well, thank you so much, Bryn, for adding this to our extensive list of workshops for folks who are supporting a loved one. Um, for those of you who are interested in building off of these skills from today, tomorrow when we send out the link to this recording, it'll include the link to our YouTube channel where you can see all the different workshops that we've done, including the caregiver skills type workshops. And then we'll also include some links, like the links to Bryn's upcoming cohort and stuff like that. And then also some EFFT links. The original creators of EFFT have a great website that has some scripts for how to respond to things that people might say to you, and some worksheets and things like that. So I'll include all of that in that email that you'll get from us later.
Awesome, McKenna. Thank you. Yeah, that website she's referencing is amazing and has a ton of really great resources. So check that out for sure. And thank you guys so much. I'm grateful and honored, and it is an incredible privilege to be here with you. So thank you all. And I hope you're able to take a nugget of what we talked about today and play around with it, see how it works. Thank you guys.
All right, thank you all for being here.